we love to deal with this and how conservatives like to spin it. We're going to go and we're going to open with the Dave Ramsey Show, and they're going to explain what's going on with the debt ceiling. Just for a comparison.
The debt ceiling of the U.S. We have apparently hit our credit limit, Christina, and there's a lot of fears of defaulting on this debt, and the Treasury has begun what they're calling extraordinary measures.
Okay, so why would we default on the debt? Is the first point.
Well, you default on it if you stop paying it, but it sort of seems like the point would be we wouldn't stop paying it. So
if we raise the debt ceiling, we would be paying it. If we don't raise the debt ceiling, we'll default on some of it, which will, like we saw in the previous, damage our credit rating in 2011. And it raised the cost of us borrowing money going forward. So it damaged it further. Right? So there's that. He's not going to get into why is this happening. Why are they doing this? It's just, there's a fear that our credit rating, we've reached our credit limit. Okay. Then we just borrow more money. We do it all the time. We've done it over 70 times since the 60s. We do it all the time. Remember, we're a government, not a household. It's a different.
Well, their platform, though, is anti-debt in general. And so I would say they are not going to view debt on that level as any different sort of thing. They won't view business debt differently. Right. They won't view government debts differently. They're going to, I think, ideologically lump it all in as exactly the same thing, even though it doesn't operate the same way.
Well, let me ask you this. Since you know the Dave Ramsey Show very well, better than I do, because you watch it more than I do. You've watched it more than I have. What is their attitude about defaulting on your debt and not paying your debt?
They would say that it's not a good thing either because you gave your word, essentially, that you were going to repay something and that's an obligation that you owe and you have to make good on. So they would not be proponents of the defaulting on it. No.
So now we're in a tricky situation where the government either needs to take on more debt so it doesn't default on its current debts, or, as the Republicans don't want to take on more debt until they can get spending cuts on other shit, if we do default, then we're not taking on more debt. So either way, it's a lose-lose for them. Either way, you have to take on more debt or default, and which kills your credit rating and will cost you more to take on debt going forward, which is devastating as a government, or you have to be in a position where you take on the extra debt pro forma, like you have 70 plus times in the past, and just pay your shit off. So now they're in a tough position.
Their stance is going to be that they need to figure out where to cut their spending in other areas of the budget so as to create
we'll see.
Money that way. I would dare say.
But that doesn't create more money now. And the money's due now. That's the problem.
I hear you, and I completely understand. I'm predicting that that's ideologically where they would go with that.
Well, let's see. They're financial experts. They should understand this really well, right? Or they're so-called financial experts. They call themselves that. Let's see what they know.
Juicy stuff. So what's going on?
Man, it's interesting. So it looks like we have hit this debt ceiling, and there's debates now. One side wants spending cuts. The other side doesn't want to budge. Y'all, it feels a little bit like the government right now.
Why don't she tell you what sides they are? The Republicans want spending cuts, or they're going to default the government. The Democrats are saying, no, we're not doing that. That's it.
Is like a drunk at the bar who ran out of their credit card limit, and people are saying, no, you can't spend anymore. And they found one more credit card in their pocket, and they're like, hey, everyone, drinks on me.
Oh, boy. Yeah, so
and that's not at all what's going on.
I feel like it's not at all like that.
It's not at all like that. What it is we've already ran up the tab. Now we just need to pay it.
Right. I would say, like, it's not to be able to make more purchases. It's to already to pay for things that have already occurred. It's already
Right.
an obligation that's happened. It's not a new obligation. It's paying for the current ones.
Well, remember this. The reason we're at the debt ceiling, right, is because Democrats and Republicans voted on a budget. We've exceeded the budget. We need to raise the debt ceiling. Right? That's all that's happening right now. Everybody's already agreed to this. Now the Republicans are reneging on their initial vote. That's all that's happening here. It's not like a drunk at a bar. But I love it. They're experts. Let's listen to them. But I love it. They're experts. Let's listen to them.
The amount of time the department can continue.
Go ahead.
You're going to have to cut this out, but I just had a good idea.
What's that?
Because I'm always drinking some sort of tea or coffee or something in a coffee mug. I feel like we need Gossip Finance mugs.
Oh, yeah. We'll get those.
Because we both always have a beverage. And if it was always, in our Gossip Finance mugs,
right.
I think that would be great.
Well, I'm
just saying, when we actually put anything in our budget, that's a cheapie probably to create, but I feel like that's a smart one we need to make.
Yeah, we can do that. It's not a big deal. But yeah.
You taking steps to avoid defaulting on the debt unless the 31.381 trillion limit is raised is uncertain. And so if you're wondering what this refers to, it's the maximum amount the U.S. government can spend on its existing obligations. So think things like Social Security, military salaries, food stamps, things like that. And they're voting to raise the debt ceiling.
That is absolutely wrong. It's not the maximum amount it can spend. It's already spent it.
And Social Security is its own separate
trust
thing.
Fund, yeah.
Therefore, they're trying to lump Social Security into something that doesn't pertain to it. I mean, Social Security is its own little issue, but it's not related to this situation.
But that's the thing, is he's talking about it like you still haven't spent the money. No, we spent the money. We already agreed and voted on spending this money. Right? So we're not arguing about how much we were going to spend. We're arguing about, do we pay off our debt? We already agreed to take on the debt. This was already agreed upon. That's what they keep fucking up, right? Because they can't. If they actually said the truth, then it doesn't justify not paying it. Because there is no justification for not paying it. That's the problem. That's why he has to keep spinning. Well, no, it's like a credit card, and and should we spend more? No, that's not what the argument is. Because if you want to make we need spending cuts, you should have argued that when you signed the budget, when you voted for the budget. Not after you agreed to spend the money.
Budget that was already overspending. They
Right.
voted for a budget that was overspending. That was when they created the debt, not with the debt ceiling. It was in a different space.
Right. This is about blackmail. And that was why I pointed it out. Why is it always Republicans in the House doing this when there's a Democratic president? Because what they really want to do here is cut Social Security, but they didn't want to do it under Trump because they'd get blamed for it. But if they do it under Biden, they can blame and say, hey, Biden was the one who cut Social Security, not us. That's what this is. It's a game of chicken that they're trying to play.
Okay, so Duncan, let's clarify this. So if Social Security is its own separate thing, how does it work to use the debt ceiling as blackmail to somehow get Social Security work? How would that work?
We'll get into that in a minute, because that's a little bit of a trick. So we'll get into that. I have a thing on Social Security.
That is a trick.
But I do want to talk about, this is the manipulation, though, that they're doing. Because it's all bullshit, right? It's like a budget, or it's like a credit card. It's not. And what they're going to...
Okay,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me ask you another question, because you brought something up, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but so we saw that there are all these instances where Republicans are trying to sort of block us from being able to continue to pay these obligations, right?
Right.
When there has been a Republican president, have the Democrats tried to block us from paying these obligations?
No. There's never been a Democratic House that's done this.
So the Democratic House has not done this, but whenever we have a Republican one with a Democrat holding the presidency, they pull this trick.
Yeah, pretty much every time.
And so if people went and wanted to start looking this up on their own, they would see that.
Yeah, you could even go to Wikipedia.
Right.
We'll show you that. It's not even that hard.
There you go, audience.
Yeah.
Go check it out yourself.
Yeah, this is a Republican trick. It backfires on them every time, but they still do it.
But the question, Christina, that you're raising is the Republicans are saying, hey, if you're going to raise this thing, you better cut the spending, bucko. And the Democrats are saying, no, hey, don't put strings attached on this. Let's just raise it, guys. Be cool.
I'm like, this is the opposite of a zero-based budget. They're
well, and I want to point this out, is what they're missing is if you were so pissed about the spending, why did you agree to it in the budget in the first place? That's the problem.
Basically running on a negative budget.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, can we go up to Washington and help them budget? Is that possible?
If you ever want just a lot more anxiety in your life, you can go to usdebtclock.org, and it has running numbers.
Yeah, so I'm going to clarify this. So the debt clock is a stupid thing. The other thing about this is if you had a balanced budget in the United States, so at any given time in this country, right, any time frame, there's a fixed amount of money that the Treasury allows out, right, and the Fed and the Treasury. And if you're in a government that's running a surplus, as we kind of learned under Clinton, that means that's money not being spent on business. So it takes away from the GDP. And it takes away from growth of the country if the government has a surplus or if the government's running a zero balance. However, the government can perpetually, forever, in perpetuity, borrow as long as it has enough income coming in and the GDP is big enough to cover it, right? So that's what you want. You want the person, the government in this case, to be always a little bit in debt or a lot in debt, even as long as they can cover it. It should be fine, because as long as they're in debt, that means the rest of us have more. And since they're a government, not a business or a household, they can run endless debt because they're backed by their taxing power. So there's a total misunderstanding of this whole situation. I'll give you a great example. So they're talking about it like it's a household. Imagine we're on a cul-de-sac, right? And Lacey's and I are the parents. We're the government. We represent the U.S. government, right? And of course, because we're the U.S. government, I have a ton of guns and, and all kinds of cool stuff and cars and all that stuff. And we have, 360 million children, whatever, running around. And we make all of our income because our kids pay us money.
360 million children.
Whatever. They're not all physically ours. I'm just saying they live there.
Thank goodness.
Right. But we make all of our money by our kids working and paying us money. Not all of our kids. Some of them can work. Some of them can't, whatever. And then we do stuff like we provide, some basic services, roads, things like that. Now, we spent a little too much, right? Now, what they're proposing, what she's proposing, and he's proposing essentially is, well, we need to cut our budget. It's like, well, wait, we already owe this money now, so we got to pay it. So we could take on some more debt. Well, the good news is Alexis and I, as the U.S. government, as the parents of this household, our money is the only money that really matters, because everybody else's money in the cul-de-sac is based on what our money is doing. So do you think we're going to have a problem getting money if we issue debt? Because our kids are going to buy some of that at interest. Our neighbors are going to buy some of that at interest. And now we can cover our stuff and everything's fine. And we can keep running this game forever and ever because we have to. Because everybody else is reliant on us. Right? Now, the other side of the coin is we could just say, well, we're not going to pay it. Well, now everybody else is like, well, shit, their credit's no good, which is going to hurt everybody else's money and credit because there's nothing to back it. So now you're talking about a cul-de-sac recession, because where are you going to go to get solid money?
Right.
Right. On top of that fact, okay, well, we need to cut things. Well, what are we going to cut? Well, of course, what they're proposing is let's cut insulin for all of our children. let's cut medical care. Because nobody's proposing that I don't get my guns every month and my bullets. Nobody's proposing that. Even though I have more guns than everybody in the cul-de-sac combined. Nobody's proposing I don't get more guns. So that's why this is such a stupid example, right? Because if you want to compare it that way, the US is the country that has more guns, but we don't have universal health care, when all the other developed households in the cul-de-sac or in the developed countries of the world have universal health care. My kids don't have, well paid for education or free college. Most of the other kids in the cul-de-sac from developed countries do. And yet you're bitching, I'm bitching about, well, shit, I don't want to pay this now, so I'm going to cut what? I'm not going to cut my guns and tanks and planes.
Oh my.
I know. So sorry, Timmy. No insulin for you this month. We'll just, unemployment can go up 2%. That's fine. On average, that means only what, 200,000 or 300,000 more people are going to die. That's what they're proposing. They're proposing a lot of death here, and the problem is they're too stupid to realize it.
For all of the debts, and it's nothing
There's a lot of
like
red.
that. So much red.
Oh,
It's not pretty, and so this is something the U.S. has never done, defaulting on its debt, which
yeah.
puts us in a really precarious
Okay,
situation.
that is not true. We just went through it. We have defaulted on our debt before. We did it in 2011. And what happened? It crashed the economy. And it caused a recession, a temporary recession worldwide until we cleared it up. So for him to say we've never defaulted, we have. The one time. It was brief, but it was still bad.
Globally, because other countries are saying, hey, you guys said you were good for the money, and this is like defaulting on your student loan payment. You can't pay. This is scary.
It's scary, and I want to kind of use this conversation. We were planning on doing an update on student loans anyways. We've had a lot of people asking about forgiveness and what it'll...
All right, we'll skip the rest of that. So they're going to go into some student loan thing. It's not like student loans, because student loans are federally backed. So, but if that federal government, their credit's not as good, then what good is having a federally backed student loan? Right?
Or
So-
your federally backed, home loans, like, with a, yeah, anyway.
Right. So that's stupid stuff. So